Now, changes in the society during early medieval India. Indian feudalism. From the post-Maurya period and especially from Gupta times, India's political and administrative developments tended to feudalize the state apparatus. What is feudalism? In European sense, feudalism describes a set of reciprocal legal and military obligations among the warrior nobility, revolving around the three key concepts of lord, vassals and fiefs. Lords, L-O-R-D-S, vassals, V-A-S-S-A-L-S, and fiefs, F-I-E-F-S. However, in the context with ancient India, the system gradually developed from the beginning of land grants. The practice of making land grants to the Brahmanas was a custom sanctified by the injunctions laid down in the Dharma Shastras, epics and Puranas. The Anusasana Parva, A-N-U-S-A-S-A-N-A Parva of the Mahibharata devotes a whole chapter to the praise of making gifts of land. Bhumi Dana Prasamasa. Bhumi Dana Prasamasa. Bhumidana-Prasamasa. Now a short note. The earlier land grants belonging to the 1st century BC were given to the Buddhist priests and Brahmanas and other religious establishments. However, in the post-Gupta's period, even administrative officials were granted land. The landed beneficiaries were given both powers of taxation and coercion, leading to the disintegration of the central authority. The secular recipients of the grants and the autonomous holders of land are generally termed as fief holders and freeholders. The major outcome was decentralization. The land grant and administrative rights. The early Pali text of the pre-Maurya period referred to the villages granted to the Brahmanas by the rulers of Kosala and Magadha. Kosala, K-O-S-A-L-A, and Magadha, M-A-G-A-D-H-A. A term used for such grants was Brahmadeya, B-R-A-H-A-M-D-E-Y-Y-A. Brahmadeya. The earliest epigraphic record of a land grant in India is a Satvahana inscription of the 1st century BC, which refers to the grant of a village as a gift in Ashwamedh sacrifice. The earliest epigraphic record of a land grant in India is a Satvahana inscription of the 1st century BC, which refers to the grant of a village as a gift in the Ashwamedh sacrifice. However, it is not clear whether the administrative or revenue rights of these lands were also given to those priests or not. It has been guessed that the administrative rights were perhaps given up for the first time in the grants made to the Buddhist monks by the Satvahana ruler Gautamiputra Satakarni in the 2nd century AD. Such a land right included the rights that the royal troops could not enter such land granted, the government officials and district police was not supposed to disturb such lands. From the period of later Mauryas, the land grants included the transfer of all sources of revenue and the surrender of police and administrative functions. The grants of the 2nd century AD mention that the transfer of the king's control only over salt, which implies that he retained certain other sources of revenue. But in some other grants, it was recorded that the donor, that is the king, gave up his control over almost all sources of revenue, including pastures, mines, including hidden treasures and deposits. Then the donor not only abandoned his revenues, but also the right to govern the inhabitants of the villages that were granted. This practice became more prevalent in the Gupta period. There were many instances of grants of apparently settled villages made to the Brahmans Brahmanas during the Gupta era. In such grants, residents, including the cultivators and artisans, were expressly asked by their respective rulers not only to pay the customary taxes to the donis, but also to obey their commands. All this provides clear evidence of the surrender of the administrative power of the state. One of the important aspects of the king's sovereignty was that he used to retain the rights of the punishing the culprits. In the post-Gupta times, the king made over to the Brahmanas not only this right, but also his right to punish all offences against family, property, person, etc. We see that by giving such privileges, the state was bound to disintegrate. Out of the 7 organs of the state power mentioned in the literary and epigraphic sources, taxation system and coercive power based on the army are rightly regarded as 2 vital elements. If they are abandoned, the state power disintegrates. This was the system created by the grant made to the Brahmins. The land was granted for as long as the existence of the sun and moon, which implies the permanent breakup of the integrity of the state. The above discussion makes it clear that in the post-Gupta period, the Brahmadeyya, Brahamdeyya, carried freedom from taxes, administrative freedom, and also the freedom from punishments. Abhaya Tarasiddhi, Abhayan Abhayan Tarasiddhi, that is the freedom from punishments. The widespread practice of making land grants in the Gupta period paved the way for the rise of Brahmin feudatories, who performed administrative functions not under the authority of the royal officers, but almost independently. What was implicit in earlier grants became explicit. Authority of the royal officers, but almost independently. What was implicit in earlier grants became explicit in grants from about 1000 AD and well recognized in the administrative systems of the Turks, Turks. The implications were many, but the major implication was the creation of powerful intermediaries wielding considerable economic and political power. As the number of land-owning Brahmins went up, some of them gradually shed their priestly functions and turned their chief attention to the management of land. Thus, their case, secular functions became more important than religious functions. The comprehensive competence based on centralized control, which was the hallmark of the Maurya state, gave way to decentralization in the post-Maurya and Gupta periods. The functions of the collection of taxes, levy of forced labor, regulation of mines, agriculture, etc., together with those of maintenance of law and order and defense, which were hitherto performed by the state official, were now systematically abandoned. First to the priestly class and later to the warrior class. Thus, the main implications of the Indian feudalism in early medieval period are as follows. Political decentralization. The seed of decentralization that was sown in the form of land grants turned into a vividly branched political organization made up of semi-autonomous rulers, namely Samantas, Mahasamantas, and others such as Rajpurushas. Samantas, Samantas, Mahasamantas, Maha Samantas, and others such as Rajpurushas, Rajpurushas. Emergence of new landed intermediaries. The emergence of new landed intermediaries, a dominant land holding social group, absent in the early historic period, is linked to the practice of land grants which began with the Satvahana dynasty. That this practice of land grants, which was started by the Satvahana dynasty, and due to it the emergence of landed intermediaries came, which was a dominant land holding social group which was not present in the ancient history or early historical period. Now, changes in agrarian relations. Free Vaishya peasants dominated the agrarian structure in early historical India, and labor services provided by the Shudra. But from the 6th century AD onwards, the peasants stuck to the land granted to the beneficiaries because they were asked not to leave the village granted to the beneficiaries or migrate to tax-free villages. This resulted in the immobility of the population and isolation from the rest of the world. Its implication was very profound, such as the development of localized customs, languages and rituals. Other changes in the society during early medieval India. The social changes in the early medieval India were mainly the product of certain economic developments, such as land grants and large-scale transfers of land revenues and land to both secular and religious elements. Decline of trade and commerce, loss of mobility of artisans, peasants and traders, unequal distribution of land and power, etc. Now, proliferation of castes, increasing pride of birth, characteristic of feudal society, and the accompanying self-sufficient village economy, which prevented both spatial and occupational mobility, gave rise to thousands of castes in India. The changes in economy were also a result of emergence of certain new castes and decline of certain old ones. For example, the constant transfer of land revenues made by princes to priests, temples and officials led to the rise and growth of the scribe or the Kayastha caste, Kayastha, which undermined the monopoly of Brahmans as writers and scribes. Similarly, the decline of trade and commerce led to the decline in the position of the Vaishyas. The process of proliferation and multiplication of castes was yet another marked feature of the social life of the period. Many new communities, which were known to us by the generic name Rajputs, were also recognized as Kshatriyas during the period. The foreign elements, which could not be put in any three higher classes, were naturally designated as the Shudras. The guilds of artisans gradually hardened into castes due to lack of mobility in post-Gupta's time. The maximum affected people were Shudras and the mixed castes. Now, the position of Brahmins. The Brahmins stood at the top of the social hierarchy during and post-Gupta period. They had regained their power and were responsible for reinterpreting the regulatory canons of life as laid down by the earlier texts. However, Brahmins had numerous subsections, now divided on the basis of many criteria such as the knowledge of Vedas, etc. Getting birth in a Brahmin family was a privilege. Brahmins had freedom from death sentence, exemption from taxes, precedence on the road, lesser punishment for certain offences in comparison with other castes. Many writers have documented the exemption of the Brahmans from capital punishments. The most severe punishment for a Brahmin was banishment. When a Brahman killed a man, the farmer had only to fast, pray and give alms. On the other hand, if somebody killed a Brahmin, he was ought to be a greatest sinner and perform the worst crime. No punishment or remorse could wipe off the Brahman Hatya, the greatest crime of those periods. Position of Vaishya. Vaishyas in the early medieval India were almost degraded to the Shudra community. In fact, Al-Biruni also did not find any difference between the Vaishyas and Shudra. If you are a Vaishya or a Shudra and you dared to recite the Vedas, your ruler would cut off your tongue. One difference was that Shudra had freedom to sell all kinds of goods, but the Vaishya were forbidden to carry on the transactions in some specified articles like salt, wine, meat, curds, arrows, idols, waters, swords, etc. Position of Shudras. Shudras were the most numerous sections in the community, and their number increased from age to age. Some of the Shudras were regarded as mixed castes, born of unions of upper caste males with lower caste females or vice versa. There were 8 Shudra castes called Ast Shudras, viz. Vyadh, Vyadha, Bhad, Bhada, Kol, Koncha, Haddi, Doma, Jal, Bagatita, Vyalagrahi and Chandal. However, there was another Shudra caste also whose position was lower than the above 8 castes. These people were called the Antyajas. These Antyajas were beyond and below the 4 orders and 4 Varnas of the Indian society. Now, short note on Antyajas. In the days of the composition of early Smritis, untouchables were called Antyajas. The Ved Vyas Samriti counts 12 names and includes all those who eat cow's flesh as Antyajas. Al-Biruni described 8 groups of people who were members of crafts and professions, but did not belong to the fourfold caste system. Namely, washerman, shoemaker, shield maker and basket maker, juggler, sailor, angler, hunter of wild animals and birds, and weaver. These correspond to Rajaka, Rajaka for washerman, Charmakara for shoemaker, then Nata or Shalushika, Buruda, Navika, Kavarta, Bhila and Kuvanidaka, who have been regarded as Chandas and Antyajas in all early Smriti texts and as Shudras by Manu. Thus they belong to the lowest castes. Now, from the perspective of the examinations, we don't need to memorize these names, that is Rajakas, Charmakara, Nata or Salushika, Buruda, Navika. These questions are now old dated. They are not being asked very much in the examinations. So it is worthless to memorize these names. It will just waste your time only. And mostly you will get only one question from it. So it is not worth learning these names because there are many names like this. And if you are going to learn these names, it is going to take a lot of time. Now, position of marriage and woman. The knowledge about the traditions prevalent in the institutions of marriage in that era comes from 2 works, viz. Smriti Chandrika and Smrityar Thasara. Smriti Chandrika, Smritichandrika, and Smrityar Thasara, Smritayarthasara. The former, that is a Smriti Chandrika, says that the intercaste marriage is forbidden in Kali Yuga. Savarna marriages are necessary for the performance of religious rites, while Asavarna marriages are of an inferior type as being dictated by desire. The latter says, that is the Smritya Thasara says, that the marriage of Brahmins with Shudra women forbidden, not the same in other castes. The polygamy was prevalent in the royal class and has been well documented in Vaijayanti. The woman's position is far degraded from that in early eras. The husband and other male relations, to begin with, must so arrange things that the wife never becomes independent. The wife must also be guarded not only against physical but also against mental unchastity for the sake of her offspring. Wife's right to maintenance in case of her supersession. They provide for her residence in her husband's house as well as her maintenance even in the event of her coveting, and as well as her maintenance even in the event of her committing adultery. When the wife is guilty of slight adultery, she must be maintained, though deprived of conjugal rights, till her performance of a penance. Literature and science. During early medieval period, there was a considerable development in the literature. However, the quality of the content in them was not of a high order. It was basically of general, imitative and reproductive character. The list is very big. However, here we note some of the most significant artworks. Naishadhiya Charitam of Sri Harsha is the most outstanding epic of this period, written under the patronage of Gahadwala king Jayachandra of Kannauj. Gahadwala king Jayachandra of Kannauj. Naishadhiya Charitam of Sri Harsha is the most outstanding epic of this period, written under the patronage of Gahadwala king Jayachandra of Kannauj. Then Raja Tarangini of Kalhana is unique. This is I am telling about the literature. Raja Tarangini of Kalhana is unique as the only known attempt at true history in the whole of surviving Sanskrit literature. A few short poems were also written during this period. Next is the Gita Govindam of Jayadev. Gita Govindam of Jayadev is known as the most musical song ever written in Sanskrit. Then the Arya Saptashati of Govardhanacharya is an erotic poem following the tradition of Gatha Saptashati of Hala. The name is Arya Saptashati, Aryasaptashati of Govardhanacharya. Govardhanacharya is an erotic poem following the tradition of Gatha Saptashati of Hala. Then next is Lalita Vigraharaja Nataka, was a drama by Somadev. The Harikeli Nataka by Visaladev. The Prasanna Raghava by Jayadev. Lalita Vigraharaja Nataka was a drama by Somadev. The Harikeli Nataka by Visaladev. The Prasanna Raghava by Jayadev. In lexicology, the Abhidhamma Chintamani, Abhidhana Chintamani, Deshi Namamala, Anekarthasamagraha and Nighana Tushesha of Hemchandra are of worth note. Next, Bhoja had written the Raja Mriganka on astronomy. Raja Mriganka on astronomy is written by the Bhoj. Next, the famous mathematician Bhaskaracharya flourished in the south in the 12th century. His Siddhanta Shiromani comprises 4 parts. The first is Leelavati, the second is Vijaganita, the third is Graha Ganita and Gola, the fourth is Gola. The last Gola deals with astronomy. Now a very significant idea in the Siddhanta Shiromani is that of perpetual motion, which was transmitted by Islam about 1200 AD to Europe, which in course of time it led to the development of the concept of power technology. Now the next is the Rasarnava, is a work on Tantra, which deals with metallic preparations and alchemy. The Dakarnava is a Buddhist tantric work composed in Apabhramsa. The Sadhanamala, a Buddhist tantric work, belongs to the 12th century. Next, the field of erotic literature saw some development. Ratira Hasya by Kokaka, Hara Mekhala by Mahuka, Rati Vilasa by Jayamangal, etc. are some important works on Kama Shastra. In the field of music, we have Matanga, Dhatupatha as codified by Bhimasen, Kuttanimiyatam of Damodar Gupta, etc. Next is Bhata Utpala wrote a work on Vastu Vidya. On cosmetics, we have Gandha Shastra by Padma Shri in his work on erotics. The Vishnu Dharmottara, gives much attention to painting was the Chitrasutra mentioned by Damodar Gupta. The Aparajita Pricha is a work on architecture which appears to have been written in Gujarat in AD 1200. The Sangeeta Ratnakara of Sharangadev was written in the 13th century in the south. The Lagha Varhani Shastra of Hemchandra is a work on political science. Another work on the duties and obligations of princes was Rajniti Kamdhenu of Gopal. Development of local cultures. The foundation of various kingdoms and fiefdoms, whose people were generally confined to them, only led to the development of localized culture, making India a diverse geographical area. The Hunas and other foreign elements were absorbed into the Indian society and cleared the ground for a rise of larger defined units such as Rajputana. Similarly, Bengal, which was earlier divided into two parts, with Gauda and Vanga, Gauda, Gauda, and Vanga, Vanga. Later, the whole region was named after Vanga. The inhabitants of the different nations differed in customs, clothing, and language. For example, the Kavala Yamala 8th century notes the existence of 18 major nationalists and describes the anthropological character of 16 peoples. Now, the development of vernacular languages. Though the Sanskrit continued to be used by the ruling class at the higher administrative levels, this language later became complex, verbose, and ornate. The Apabhramsa started to differentiate into Proto-Hindi, Proto-Bengali, Proto-Rajasthani, Proto-Gujarati, Proto-Marathi, Proto-Assamese, Proto-Odia, Proto-Maithili languages. Apabhramsa is a term used by the native Sanskrit grammarians since Patanjali to refer to the dialects prevalent in North India before the rise of the modern languages. From the 6th century onwards, the linguistic variation became very fast because of lack of inter-regional communication and mobility. In the tribal areas, the Brahmanas imposed various forms of Sanskrit on the existing Aryan and pre-Aryan dialects. The consequential interaction gave rise to regional languages. The migrating Brahmanas also enriched the regional languages. This resulted in the development of regional scripts and regional grammar. Development of regional art and culture. In the field of art and architecture, this period ushered in a new age marked by regional styles in sculpture and construction of temples, which became particularly prominent in South India from the 8th century onwards. The post-Gupta iconography prominently displays a divine hierarchy, which reflects the pyramidal rank in society. The Vishnu, Shiva, Durga became the supreme deities, lording over many other divinities of unequal sizes. The Mahayajanas and Danas, donations, were gradually replaced by a system known as Puja. Puja was interlinked to the doctrine of Bhakti, which became a distinct feature of medieval religion. Both Puja and Bhakti became integral ingredients of Tantricism, which arose due to the acculturation of the tribal people through large-scale religious land grants. Now, a short note on contribution of Al-Biruni. Al-Biruni, who visited India with the Turkish invader Mahmud Ghazni and his army, has given a vivid account of Indian society during those times. He visited India frequently and stayed in different parts of the country. Assisted by learned scholars of India, he translated from Sanskrit a few Indian works on astronomy, especially the Pauli Sasidhanta, Brihat Samhita and Laghu Jatakam of Varaha Mihira, Varahmihira, Varahmihira. Probably he was the first to introduce the treasure of Sanskrit literature to the Islamic world. His Tehqiq-e-Hind, Reality of Hindustan, is the most important work in which he gives a good graphic description of India. As he had seen, while narrating the social conditions of India, Al-Biruni observes that the Hindu society was based on the caste system. He describes the institutions of marriage, the position of women, the Hindu fasts and festivals. He observed that Hindus have numerous books about all the branches of science. He provides us long lists of famous books of Indians, astronomy, medicine, alchemy, etc. Now, changes in the society during early medieval India.